Hello, and welcome to the Producers Guild conversation with the producers of News of the World. We'd like to thank our friends at Universal Pictures and Angelotti PR for making this event possible. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator today. Pete Hammond is Deadline's awards columnist and chief film critic, where he covers the Oscar and Emmy seasons. Widely considered to be one of the preeminent awards season commentators for film and television, Pete is also the host of the popular KCET cinema series and UCLA Extension's sneak preview screening and filmmaker Q&A series. Welcome, Pete. Welcome, panelists. And please, Pete, take it away.
All right, thanks, Kyle, and welcome to our conversation here about News of the World, which is in my top 10. It was in my top 2 for 2020. I really like this film for many reasons, and we'll talk about that. But this is not your average Western, if we put it in that genre. It has such pertinence for so many things going on today. It was a real eye-opener for me when I saw this picture. And I want to introduce the producers of the film. First up, he is a partner in Playtone with Tom Hanks, and he has produced so many things. I can't begin to list them all, but a lot of good things. Gary Goetzman, hi.
Hey, how are you, Pete?
Good to see you again. And she has also produced a lot of things. I can't list them all. Certainly The Danish Girl and Kinsey, Nurse Betty, on, and worked on many other films in many capacities. Gail Mutrux, hi.
Good to see you, Pete.
You too. And our third producer, Gregory Goodman, has worked with the director of this film and co-writer, Paul Greengrass, on many projects and many other things he's been involved with too, but among his films, Jason Bourne and Captain Phillips, which Gary Goetzman knows very well too. Another film starring Tom Hanks that was released this year. So welcome, Gregory Goodman.
Thank you.
And all right, so here we go. News of the World. Let's talk about how it came about. Gary, I am astonished to, and I guess I should know this, but Tom Hanks has never done a Western. He's been in all these genres. This is his first time in the saddle. That's amazing.
It's true. And, he wasn't looking, but he always does love to do, new milieus that he hasn't done before. He's still a captain, though, Pete. I think that's okay.
That's true.
But yeah, he kind of fits right into it. You go, he'd never done it before, but he sure made it look like he had,
Yeah, for sure. So how did this come your way? How did you guys get involved?
Many stories of how it happened, but one of the stories is that our good friend Eric Roth gave Tom the book, and Tom read it, and a couple of the good people who work for us at Playtone also had read the book. And it was just kind of this convergence of Tom having got it from Eric. We had got it through our normal processes of how we try to find material. Gail had also found this material on her own and had an option on the material. And that was a thing of that. You may ask, Eric Roth gave Tom the book, wasn't it because Eric Roth wanted to write it? And yes, we found out, yes, he did want to write it, but it just kind of got lost in the mix and the world moved on. And so it's kind of an amusing beginning, actually, how it came about, but it was probably destiny.
It probably was. And what was it about, particularly for you guys at Playtone, to dive into Western, since you hadn't done a Western before? And
Paulette Jiles just wrote a very compelling book. It's really that, more than the background of whether it's here, Civil War, frontier, adventure, or whatever. It was really that she's a great writer, and she wrote a brilliant book, and Gail felt the same way.
Yeah, Gail, so you had an option on this. The book came out in 2016. At what point did you option this and find it in the first place?
Well, I optioned it before the book was published. I optioned it, I think, in February 16th. It was published in October. And we have our sneaky ways. I guess I can tell you on this one, but the Historical Novel Society, we read a little synopsis, practically a year before the book was published. And it just got me, and so I pursued it, optioned it. And the following year after, actually, it was a finalist in the National Book Award too, in 2016. And the agent handling the rights told me that Playtone had called. They were interested. And then Gary, wanted to meet, and we got together and then decided we would produce the film together.
Wow, and I think, since we have an audience here of producers, and I think you just revealed one of the tricks of your trade, the Historical Novel Society. It sounds so dry, yet you're signed up and this is how you
I'm feeling generous today.
What other societies are you members of that maybe they want to
p.g.a.
Okay, so and once you got the book, you read the book and it just spoke to you, and you decided to dive into the genre with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because it's a road movie. It's also about Reconstruction, which I wasn't that familiar with, and Texas was a little unique about it because it took a long time for them to get readmitted into the Union. It wasn't until 1870. It was the last state, because it was very divisive there about wanting things to remain the way it was before the war, and in the script, Paul, especially addressed a lot of that, with the slavery amendments. But the irony, though, in a way, I guess it was predictive that this, the book came out in 2016, so it was, before the election. Here,
yeah, it really mirrors things that we're going through in a very kind of divided country right after the Civil War. The whole idea of news, how it's presented, how people get it, what they choose to believe, all of this, it's sort of a precursor to what really happened, right after this book came out. Pretty amazing, right. I would say.
It's a recurring theme in Western society, Western history, isn't it? These kinds of issues.
Totally right. And Gregory, tell us how Paul Greengrass came aboard. He too has never done a Western. I talked to him actually last week about this, and although being a fan of them, and particularly John Ford and the Searchers and other things, this is the first time for him here. But it doesn't drift that far from social issue kinds of movies that he's interested in.
Exactly. I mean, from where I sit, I know that Tom sent him the script in was it early 2019, I believe. And then I think Paul, or late 2018, but it was around then, and I think
it was January.
Yeah, early 19, and Paul took to it immediately, instantly. The very themes that you're talking about, Pete, I think he immediately saw in the script and then in the novel, and we read it and we were off to the races. I mean, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Seemed it was. Correct, guys. It was like
you did a rewrite and
did a rewrite, but we were prepping. We read the script in January, and by May we were up in Santa Fe, making the movie happen.
How did the script come about initially? Luke Davies was the initial writer on it, Oscar-nominated writer, has done some terrific work.
Right.
How did he come on board?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, at the Tori Schmidt, who works with me, had been in Toronto and saw Lion, and he met Luke there, and then we gave him the book and we met with him, and he was very interested. And it was shortly after that we started working with Gary and Playtone. And so everyone met together, and Gary and Tom, liked what Luke had to say. So that's how he came to write it originally.
And did the original draft, and then Gregory, and then as you were saying, Paul got in and did his draft.
His draft, right? Did a rewrite. But I think, it gave him a chance to address some of those themes that you were talking about earlier and kind of make it work for him. I mean, the underlying material is based on a novel, so it's very straightforward. It is, the structure of it is sort of, and as Gail mentioned earlier, it's a road trip. The movie has a backbone that you follow very clearly, but I think Paul wanted to put in themes and issues that interested him.
He magnified them for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's definitely a sense of a country that needs healing. I mean, I'm simplifying it.
Yeah.
But,
and it's quite a road trip. I think it's supposed to be 400-mile journey here. And let's talk from a producing standpoint. Where do you go to make that work and make it affordable?
Tell them. I think that's too big a secret. But I know you're going to give it up.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Tell them how Santa Fe stood in for that.
So Santa Fe, I'll tell you what ends up working. And, I don't want to get into the weeds because it'll take forever, but, we had one particular Western town that with the help of Darius Wolski's genius with camera angles and with David Crank's production design, and frankly, with our visual effects help, we managed to make into 3 very distinct and separate towns that you would never know were the same place. A little bit of digital work on the horizon helps you create a different context everywhere you go. I would say if you put a pin in Santa Fe, we never went more than 20 air miles from Santa Fe to shoot. And we found a big variety of worlds in that radius.
That's pretty remarkable, so
we
kudos.
Really did create the sense of journey. I mean, we were up against season issues. I mean, all the things that you always deal with when you're outside, when the seasons change, we had all those challenges, but we really blew right through all that, I think, very well.
Seasons and snakes.
Yeah, snakes.
Yeah.
You did have, all the things that go with Westerns and in that too. I did see you had rattlesnake handlers and wranglers and tarantulas.
Tarantula handlers. Yeah. And, it's funny. I mean, this is a bit of an aside, but even in the winter, once the sun comes out and it's at all warm on the rocks, even then the rattlers come out. So it's not like late November, you're out of the woods. You've got to be, it was a thing. You also, I think we all probably, there was a huge cowboy boot investment. You understand why cowboy boots exist, because it really protects your ankles in case you do come across a rattler, obviously.
When you approach doing a Western, are Westerns particularly more expensive when you go into this? Because this is so period, this is 1870. You are really dealing with recreating everything basically here.
Yes, and I mean that's one of the advantages to New Mexico. There's a pretty big talent pool there that knows how to do their thing. I think we were very lucky with the people that we had helping us with the horses and the cows and the livestock. And our stunt department was very well versed in horse action and horse training. I think we were very lucky there. That's where if you don't get it right, you look pretty foolish. I think Paul's eye.
There was such a great tax break there too, Greg, right?
Oh yeah. Incredible tax break. But there's a great talent pool there too. There's a great tax break, and there's a very, very strong talent base. Very
so
strong.
You used a lot of locals
Yes,
in this.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I wanted to talk about the casting here. Obviously, Tom Hanks, but his co-star, who's on screen almost as much as he is, in a very demanding role, has to speak in the Kiowa tribe's tongue and different things at different points, and that's Helena Zengel. And they say never work with kids or animals, and you're doing it all here. Gary, talk about how you found her. She's amazing.
Well, I'll pass that off in a minute, but Tom has no fear. You can put animals around him. He'll take a hooch. You know, he'll do whatever he has to do, and not think twice about it, and be loving and give his best. And I think that early on, you know, it was thought, hey, maybe we can cast this from maybe East European countries, Germany, and that kind of got in the air with Paul. And then luckily, Gail will tell you this story.
Okay, Gail. Sound?
You good, Gail?
I had followed the Berlin Film Festival, and I read about System Crasher, and I was interested in the director, and so got a link to the film from her agent, and that's where I saw Helena Zengel, and so I told Paul and our casting director about her, and I think she was like about the second person that Paul looked at. You know, just I said, and when I found out too that she spoke English pretty well and she rode horses, it seemed like destiny.
She may have been the first. She may have been really, Gail, the first person, I think, because we looked at some tapes of people, but
everybody flipped.
She really was. It was a lucky break, right? Because you recommended her, and Helena flew to London to meet with Paul, and it was like boom, boom, boom.
Minutes.
Right?
Amazing. Another payoff for you, Gail, of just going out and
Take it, baby. Take it.
It really is
Actually,
amazing.
the casting director, Francine Maisler, she sent me an email saying because of that, she was taken off. She lost a few weeks' work because everyone thought it would take so long to find the girl.
And right away, you never know. You always hear about, oh, we auditioned 600 people and this movie wasn't going to get made. We couldn't find it. But here is an example of kismet, as they say in the business. This is the first time, I believe, since the 1950s, Kiowa tribe has been featured in a major film. And so that is significant. And their participation here and representation, I think, is very significant in this film too. How did that work out, and what kind of, you had consultants and people involved to get that right?
Right. Anybody want to pick that up? You want to go, Greg, with that? Or
Well, we had a couple of consultants. We had one particular consultant who is sort of it's her area of expertise is Kiowa. And she introduced us to an elder of the tribe, who's one of the last remaining people who knows, because a lot of their traditions and their art is spoken, so it's not written. So we were very lucky to get hooked in with her. Name is Dorothy, and get hooked in with her. And Dorothy became instrumental in helping teach Helena how to speak, what the customs were, and learn the stories. All that was sort of the way we set that up. We made a point too of casting, when we cast Kiowa depicted in the film, we brought, they all live pretty much in Oklahoma. We brought them to New Mexico to be in the film. And Dorothy came along. So they were pretty involved with us in the making of the film. I think I've covered that, right?
And lovely.
Lovely. Oh, delightful, delightful.
Right.
Delightful.
Yeah, you had several, I guess about 30 Indigenous actors in the film. here in the authenticity of it, bringing in that those actors here.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Kiowa.
Yeah, the Kiowa.
Of the Kiowa, yeah. I thought that was great. That aspect of it was great. I was really impressed with Helena's. You know, she seemed like a natural with that language.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She's
picked it
pretty
up.
fearless. Helena's pretty fearless. You know,
Yeah.
she throws herself into it, and you don't see the wheels turning with her. You know, she's
No,
just she's inhabiting it.
and let's say she's a hostess on the set too, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah.
Just lovely to everyone and curious about everyone.
Oh yeah.
And we'll get you cookies whenever you want.
Hey, Gary, did Tom, had he had any experience on horses or anything like that, or with guns? He seems very natural in this kind of environment.
Yeah, he hadn't really. I mean, I think he was he could walk with a horse, right? But I don't know that he, was that well versed. But we got
He
him
had a
out
training.
there. He was trained, and he
Yeah,
had
we
great
yeah.
wranglers with him, and he caught on to it pretty quickly.
Wow.
He seemed like a natural to it because he began training, and it seemed in very short order he was off to the races. You know, he took to it.
He could, you want him to be an acrobat. He'll figure it out in 2
Yeah.
weeks. It's just the way it is. Just frustratingly Tom Hanks is.
How did this wind up as a Universal film?
Okay, wow. I'm going to keep it a little bit simple, Pete. But initially, it was with our good friend Elizabeth Gabler at Fox 2000, and a little company called Disney came along and bought Fox. Fox 2000 was, for all intents and purposes, eliminated, and we went to our other very good friend, lovely person who can figure out a mess pretty quickly, and that's Donna Langley at Universal. And if you know her, you know what a great person she is. And she made it all work. She had a previous relationship also with Paul. He did the Bournes there. And I think that it was just one of those that we quickly decided and jumped over to. And it's, of course, been a great situation,
Totally.
Yeah, there. And then, coming out this year in the middle of a pandemic, this was released first in theaters. What theaters were open on Christmas Day, and now is in VOD and all of that available, like most movies.
Right.
Gregory, maybe you can tell me, because I believe with William Goldenberg, the film editor, a lot of this had to be done in a very different way in post-production because of the pandemic. Can you tell me how that worked in finishing the film, and particularly in the editing process?
So
Let me just say before Greg says that, we were so lucky that we got to film it.
Yes, before.
Not within COVID. So it really kind of caught us by surprise in the middle of having our post plans and all that stuff. But Greg can.
We had finished the director's cut March 3rd or 4th, and we're all flying to Los Angeles March 7th, 8th, and 9th to present the film to the studio on March 12th or something. I may have the date slightly wrong. And I think we were all going to look at it like March 11th, Gail and Gary. I can't remember exactly, but it was somewhere in that early to mid-March, and the whole thing evaporated, right? And here we were, Billy Goldenberg and myself were here in California, and Paul was still in England, and the movie was sort of in the ether and no one could see it, right? And we wanted to finish it. So it took us a fair amount of time, because the first few months was difficult to get everyone to see the movie and kind of develop a consensus. And then we began a process of finishing the movie kind of with virtual, and I'm sure you've heard this from other people, but setting up virtual cutting room between Billy, myself, and you guys, and Paul, and then getting into the finishing got a little tricky. Billy would be at a mixing stage here in Los Angeles. We'd be mixing in London. The visual effects finaling, it all became kind of remote, if that makes sense. All of it was done kind of It would be as if Billy and Paul were in a room together, but they were in two separate rooms halfway around the world, and they'd watch stuff together in real time. I think what it meant for Billy was being awake at 3 a.m. quite a lot to match London time. And it was a little expensive and a little wonky, but it ended up really working, I think. The finished movie turned out great.
The sound is very.
Yeah, beautiful.
Mhm.
I went back to London once in the middle of this process, and Billy didn't. And it's painful going back and forth right now.
Oh God, yeah. I was doing a thing with George Clooney. He had just arrived in London, and they said just go straight to your house, and you've got to quarantine for 14 days. And he was saying he didn't even know. I don't even know if he still can get back. I mean, it's like a very difficult situation to pull off a big scale movie like this in the midst of all that is quite a challenge, but
It actually was, I found it, I would rather have not, I mean, I think we all would have rather not, for a host of reasons, gone through all this, but you respond to the challenge you're presented with. I mean,
That's right. They've all got their own DNA and their own problems, and
we didn't have a choice right now. You know,
we were lucky we were able to shoot it. Actually, that's really what I think was.
And finishing it was fine. And the truth is, the alternatives were unacceptable. We had to finish it, right? So
and did you always have that release date? I mean, as far as I can remember, it's one of the few films I saw that didn't move off its
day. Yeah.
It was.
I don't know what any of it means right now. I mean,
No.
it's such an interesting time.
Yeah, but moving, I mean, it's scary out there. I mean,
yeah. Well, it is, but they stuck to their guns and said we're going to release it now, and and this movie may find even a bigger audience, oddly enough, by being made now available, on a big, wider scale here than just in theaters.
But when you have a Christmas date, you go, okay, I guess they know what they're doing, and maybe that's a great idea. But slowly you start to realize the cities that aren't open at all, and that you're kind of just out there. Luckily, we've had some really sweet, great reviews. And I think that, being honest about it, we probably would have loved it to, once Wonder Woman went day and date on Christmas, we probably wish if it were possible that we could have done that.
yes.
And I think we got kind of caught in the politics of theater chains and movie studios, and who knows what kind of things are we going to do to make each other's lives great in the future. And but we're glad it's out everywhere now. If somebody wants to see it, they can see it about it.
And it's of the moment, the movie, a little bit. I don't know, a year from now or 14 months from now, this movie's time is now, right?
Oh, this movie is about as relevant as anything I've seen. I mean, you didn't, obviously it was in this book, it was all there, and as you say, it's been that way in Westerns before and that sort of thing, but it seems like it met its time.
And that's really Paul. He really pushed that envelope, we feel, on it. That's he was really committed to that.
And another thing too, I wanted to mention this incredible, you've mentioned some by name, but Dariusz Wolski, the cinematographer, and David Crane, and Mark Bridges, two-time Oscar winner for the costumes, and Billy Goldenberg. And I have to say, and I collect soundtracks, I've got several of them right over here. I'm a big film music aficionado, and actually my James Newton Howard collection is so big I had to move it upstairs, but this is the best score I've ever heard him do.
That's great. We worked with James a lot on, we had him on Charlie Wilson's War, which was Mike Nichols's last film, and always great. He's worked with us a couple other times, and he's probably got more nominations than anybody on the planet. But he's never won it, and you kind of, this guy has laid down so many great scores. And I want to say our designer, David Crank, is who it is, was, we go way back with him to John Adams. He's done a couple movies with us recently, and it's just, he really, I feel, did such a superb job on minimal budget to really make this thing look big, and God knows he did that. And we mustn't forget Mark Bridges. Now I'm doing a list.
Yeah, well, why not? Why not? They're all great.
Mark Bridges, he's a p.g.a, Paul Thomas Anderson collaborator, and he did a fabulous job. You don't think this is all normal. That wardrobe is so natural feeling, I feel, to the movie. And I'm gonna stop being excited.
I've worked with Mark in particular. I've worked with on probably 5 or 6 films. I think he and I met on 8 Mile. It was a long time ago. And he's got a certain gift.
For sure.
Getting into getting real. And the movie feels it, it feels like, because Paul is a documentarian by heart. He wants to be real. He wants to be in 1870 Texas. So the challenge for David Crank, and the challenge for Darius Wolski, and the challenge for Mark, the challenge for everybody, is to transport us into that time and space. And I've been heartened to see a lot of reviews have given the film kudos for that accomplishment, and that really rests on those people's shoulders for their really hard work.
Yeah, I was curious too, speaking of being a documentarian and everything, and the basic gist of this movie of Hank's character is a guy that goes from town to town. Really, he's like an entertainer in a lot of ways, but reading the news and giving the news. Were there people like this, Gail? I mean, did they exist?
Well, Paulette Jiles has a friend whose great-grandfather did it. And when Paulette heard that, that's what inspired her, to write the book. And no, we haven't been able to document anyone else. There's like, oh, I've heard of it, but it came specifically from someone she knows.
It's like the original Twitter or something, I mean, it's you never think about that. Yeah. It's totally original. It's such an interesting idea to wrap a whole movie around, and the whole journey of it, and then all the underlying things that go with it make it unique, because with Westerns, they used to be such a staple of movies and obviously television and everything else. And now it's that rare form that we get to see every now and then, which is great. It's almost like Westerns are new again in a lot of ways.
In a way, I'll just say, it's very American in that if you think about Mark Twain and Will Rogers, that's what they did, but with more humor. And even Dickens, when he would go touring and stuff, so the idea of telling stories, to a crowd, I think, developed actually, going into the late 19th century, early 20th century.
Yeah. I mean, you were going to say something, Gary, I think.
Well, Westerns are just such a great form to put across whatever, ideas you want to put across about your modern world. I mean, they've just always been great for that.
Yeah.
Should do more of them.
It's something, congratulations on this. And Gary, in the same year, you tackled World War II on the open seas. I mean, you have nothing to do in your spare time. I mean, you just...
No, I don't. We have to have a World War II movie a year. You know that.
Yeah.
And now I'm working on another one, something with Apple Plus.
Yeah, well, nothing like just getting easy things to put on film and make spectacular movies. Well, congratulations.
Go home, right, Pete?
That's it. That's right. Well, like I said before, it's one of my favorites, definitely this year, and great work all. So congratulations, and thanks for joining us here at the Producers Guild to tell us everything and about those secrets of Gail's, about how she finds this stuff. So
That's right. Pete, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Nice meeting you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks.